Welcome to Breakthrough Consciousness.
The podcast where we get out of the loop and into it all.
I'm Clayton.
My name is Sean.
And today we're going to continue from where we left off last time, extending from our intentions, which mainly circulated around the point of being in the heart space and grounding this in into a more tangible experience. We felt like it would be best to move forward with what we feel are some of the issues that keep us from being in that space most of the time.
Exactly. So our whole intention here is to create conversations that lead back into a centering of, first and foremost, just having present conversations with each other where we're tuned into the moment and circling that around conversations that continually just using this tool of the mind and of language to point towards itself, to see itself as what it is, to kind of enter into that witness state. And today, as you mentioned, we are going to just be talking about what distracts us from doing that more often than not. So, Clayton, do you want to kind of kick it off and just maybe share a story of some distractions that you have faced, or what are you thinking?
No doubt. And recently, some life experiences have made me realize how big these distractions have actually been in my life. So I just recently lost my glasses out of a car window. And I'll just leave it at that. But not having my sight like I did prior to that experience made me realize, wow, I'm really much more tuned into myself. I'm doing what I feel are more internally productive things now that I don't have all of these distractions outside of me that are at my disposal, watching the television, playing a game, even just a lot of reading at times can be a distraction from what's going on in the moment because it's an escape from that. So just the last few days, not having my spectacles have made me realize I want to distract myself a lot of times. I want to turn on the TV and not deal with something that I'm feeling or working through in the moment, but I've had no choice but to, actually deal with this slight frustration head on of not being able to see and move beyond that. But that's really made me realize not only there are so many distractions, television, anime, and video games being one of them specifically, two of them I suppose, but how much I actually want to distract myself so often. So it's just been really crazy realizing the extent of that.
What has that been like, not having your glasses? How bad is it for you?
It's a really balanced feeling, I would say. It's first and foremost kind of frustrating and annoying not being able to see to the extent that I've taken for granted.
Right. You can still get around and all that.
I can get around and everything, but I can't read anything that's more than 6 inches away from my face or
Gotcha.
really even make out defining features on people that I'm used to seeing. So everyone's very blob-esque and whatnot. So
yeah, this is a little bit of a different energy doing this podcast here right now. We're not really making quite as much eye contact. I feel like we're both in more of an inner space.
But it's really nice at
the
same
nice.
time.
Yeah, it is. It's different. And I'm kind of, as you can hear, going through a little bit of a head cold, so I'm trying to speak in a way that's not extremely nasally. We're sipping on some ginger coffee right now. That was a new creation.
Yes, it's really good too.
Yeah. So
but
just some different energy, but show must go
still
on.
working with it and through it, and it's honestly a good experience to sit here and talk about what some of our distractions are. And
well, it's funny that you give that specific example and that this is manifested in your life recently, because I think I even mentioned it in maybe prior conversations that you and I have had, but I was thinking about how literally vision and just the sense of seeing really kind of is a distraction for me, just because I know that I'm a fairly visual person. I wouldn't say I'm a very visual person.
But fairly visual.
But fairly, because in my waking life, I feel like what I'm looking at is my primary focus.
I could see that and relate to that as well. Do you feel that your vision kind of like takes you more into some of the more um, visually, I guess, aesthetically pleasing things and into those spirals rather than seeing certain things at their core at times?
Perhaps. I'm actually thinking more just literally, like not even like psychologically, but just literally my main attention is on what I'm seeing. Like, it doesn't mean that I necessarily seek out like aesthetically pleasing things to look at. It's just that's the sense that I'm most tuned in with. Like for instance, my sense of smell is pretty terrible. So I know for some people, smell is a scent. Smell is a scent. Smell is a sense that they're most tuned into, Anyway, it's kind of a weird example, but just like I said, interesting that that's come up for you.
It's really strange. Like, and it's also made me realize that a lot of times, with super beautiful people, I will get caught up in their physical characteristics or whatever instead of like diving in deep with them or whatever. It's just kind of an honest thing. Like, beautiful people are attractive, and we can all admit that. I wouldn't even just say beautiful people. Everybody's beautiful. Everyone's attractive. It's just
attractive people are attractive.
Yeah.
To people that they attract. Beauty's obviously in the eye of the beholder, so to speak.
Truly,
so.
But since I haven't had my glasses, it's given me a chance for every person I encounter to really feel out their energy more and hear their tone of voice and what their internal being is, so to say, more so than that.
Yeah.
Shell of who they create for themselves, the outer self. So that's been a really eye-opening thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Which is kind of a ironic thing to say in this
it's just
time.
Funny because even our language, like it has built into it, it's got sight as kind of like the predominant narrator of our script, like before you said, I see what you mean. It's just like,
right.
It's built into
It's more of that internal sight, though, I feel like, because like, I see what you're saying.
Right, true.
I see what you say.
Third eye computes.
Yeah, the internal eyes.
Yeah.
Broadened by the subject.
Yeah, man, distractions. It's life. It's life in general. I mean, I would like to throw the big umbrella term out there that like the main distraction is ego, but I want to save kind of going into the details of that discussion for like a whole episode in and of itself. So,
no doubt, most of that physical sense of reality, is
literally
distraction itself, which is so crazy that having these experiences, like you being physically sick, me not being able to physically see, are kind of bringing us to a more internal place and stasis. So
right.
It's like going inward a little bit more and having our comfort there rather than within the physical world.
Yeah. Poignant. I mean, it's evident in just the atmosphere of today. We just got another snowfall. I think everyone's kind of like itching for spring at this point, but
I'm excited, but
yeah, winter's sprinkling on, so it's been a weird one. I think it's just all the ups and downs in the weather patterns lately. I think that's what's tripping people up.
If it would just stay consistently like cool and snowy instead of getting warm and rainy, I don't think anyone would actually mind. So do you feel like you would like to touch a little bit deeper onto what you feel distracts you, or maybe share another story of what some of your distractions might be?
Yeah. I think the easiest place to start is just talking about something that happened earlier today. I was driving out, getting onto 71 South, and as I was getting onto the entrance ramp, I saw this guy, but I was like starting to accelerate, getting on the highway, but I saw this guy hitchhiking, and he like was flashing the peace sign and the hitchhiker's thumb, and like I threw him the peace sign, but just kept driving, and like felt like we made somewhat of a connection, like he was putting off good energy.
And but you recognized it.
I
so
recognized it like after I was already, well, obviously when it happened, but it wasn't a quick enough reaction and response to be like, oh,
It was a
pull
split
over.
moment thing.
Yeah, exactly. It was more like, oh, okay, whatever. But then I started thinking about it. Then my heart caught up to the situation. I was like, I coulda / shoulda been that guy to help this dude out, you know?
You say your heart caught up, so you recognize you were in more of a mental space that was, I guess, per se, distracting you from what you were really feeling in that moment.
Yeah, precisely.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's
do
an
you want to
example.
explain that a little further for us? Maybe break that down a little bit, like.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that. I mean, I guess I'll just speak for myself. I can't speak for other people, but I sense that this is a common experience. When I go through my day, I'm thinking. I'm a thinker. I don't know if everyone is, but I go throughout my day, just thoughts are flying around. You know, I habitually like have this. It's almost like a needle on the groove of the mind, and I'm just like this center, like witnessing, listening, identifying point, just like go almost like scrolling through a feed of thoughts. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's a huge distraction. Like I witness it, you know, I'm at least at that point in my self-awareness where like I can recognize that I'm in that thought loop and like start to unidentify with the whole process. But you know, I usually recognize it for what it is and just label it as thinking and allow it to keep going. So I mean, sort of long-winded way of just pointing out that, like you said, in that moment, I was just in my mind. And so I see a hitchhiker, like, kind of caught me off guard because I was getting on the highway, like I said. But my first thoughts are, of course, like, oh, hitchhiker equals bad equals axe murderer, you know, fear narrative cropping up.
I wish I could say I don't relate, but I've literally had the same thoughts, you know, that fear is just, I feel like almost implanted in us from an earlier age.
Yeah,
And
literally.
regardless of the good energy whoever's on the side of the road might be putting off, like, it's that idea in our heads. It's like, oh no, it's the vagabond axe murderer. He's going to ask for a ride and chop me up.
Right, exactly. I mean, shoot, we're taught to not talk to strangers. I mean, what a toxic belief.
Close-minded kind of system. You know, maybe we should be taught more to read people's energies and do what's good and find our own center instead of closing ourselves off to what is unknown, per se.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of our own instilled beliefs, I feel like, are distractions from operating within the heart center as well.
Well, I mean, even the language right there of like the known and the unknown, I feel like that kind of is, in a meta sense, the distractions. Like there's the unknown and then there's the known that is a distraction from the unknown.
That in which we become familiar with keeps us from getting closer to that familiar but unknown source of it all, the rest of it.
The mystery.
Yeah.
And that's not to demonize that.
Right, like we know about avocados, they're good. It doesn't mean they're distracting us from anything. Other fruits or vegetables. That is terrible.
That was a really bad example, but I see where you're going with.
That was a really bad example.
Well, I mean, the point is like labeling, analyzing, organizing in our minds what is known and creating a paradigm, a comfort zone, if you will, of beliefs. And well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a distraction, but the way that our system is organized, our paradigms and belief systems, and the general mainstream narratives that are floating around in people's consciousness, you know, that is one that is not focused on coming from a centered, present place. It's about productivity, hustling to earn your living, to earn your worth within the system. You know, these very competitive types of philosophies that are keeping people in that mental space of like
self-preservation. That really is one of the most broad distractions that I feel like affects more people than care to admit, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not to take it to a dark place there, but
I mean, even I don't want to admit at times that, like, I'll get caught up in my own desires to further myself, like whether it's me like committing to going to school or sacrificing some sort of gathering with friends to work another shift at work to make some more money to do whatever it is, like pay my bills or move
right.
forward in that sense. I'm not sacrificing my stability to have a good time, which you look at it from that perspective, it doesn't sound like such a bad idea. But when you look at it from the heart's perspective, which is like you've been working for a week straight, doing nothing but going to school and going to work and going to school and going to work, getting spiritually, mentally exhausted at times.
Yeah.
And those things and that like necessity to have financial responsibility over making sure that my life is okay and that I have a home and running water and food is a distraction from the abundance that I feel like Earth is designed to provide us in that centered, connected sense.
I absolutely agree. And when we harmonize with the earth rather than harnessing it, right now we're kind of abusing this provider. And if we choose to honor the sciences and technologies that are harmonious with the earth, which do exist, by the way.
They've been here a lot longer than some of these technologies that take from it have been, I swear.
That's probable as well. That's another conversation. But I mean, this is a perfect example, though. Honestly, I mean, just to get back to the distractions component of it. I mean, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, if I'm not grinding at a day job, I'm back here in the studio grinding on music, which on one hand, like, I feel great about because I need to be creative every single day. That's a part of feeding my spirit, my life force, if you will. But at the same time, why am I even doing like to what end? Is it to be heard by an audience? Is it to, I could ask myself a bunch of questions about it as far as intention goes. But ultimately, I mean, I feel that my intentions are to inspire myself and to just do my part in sharing that with the community. And I'll admit, I have distractions from doing that fully. Emotional distractions, beliefs that keep me more so in my comfort zone rather than getting out there and using as much of my physical energy as possible to hustle on that, rather than putting a lot of physical energy into a day job and then trying to do that additionally. Yeah, I mean, that's a very relevant situation in my life right now. It's just finding balance in that sense.
Really conducive schedule towards having a lot of time in the studio creating, though, which is really nice.
Which I'm very thankful for sure. And I'm happy to do the grind. My point here is just how much to demonstrate that even in my life, I'm an example of how much we tend to devote our time and energy into sustaining this system of commerce, this idea that we need to earn our living and our worth rather than me putting at least as much time into a spiritual practice per se, or I'm putting energy into being the most healthy, holistic, well-rounded
being that you can possibly be.
Yeah, I wanted to say well-being. I was trying to fit that phrase in there somehow. Grammatically, it wasn't happening.
It's right there, though. I mean, that is well-being.
Yeah.
Like, as simple as it can be, being well-being.
Right. And I mean, sure, there's a ton of examples I could give you as far as like, I mean, everyone's got their quote-unquote bad habits, things that you aren't proud of that, you habitually do because just something you picked up. I mean, society right now is chock full of habits, and we are habitual beings. So I'm trying to get more so on the train of like just creating more positive habits, like how we've been putting energy into this podcast. This is a really positive habit for us. Mm-hmm. It's becoming more natural and it's flowing easier. And it's only going to continue to be more fluid.
I mean, the fact that we can get together on days that we don't have an exponentially higher energy and
Right.
still get down to the vibe and the core and flow with it is example enough that you keep doing things that are positive and beneficial, they're going to make their shift and change in you on a more subconscious level at that point. But it's realizing our distractions first so that we can step out of them and into a more positive dynamic for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's go just a little bit deeper here before we wrap up and maybe give a little preview into. I mean, we've already kind of given an organic preview as to what our next episode is going to be, which is the opposite of this. What we can do to actually consciously practice getting into that heart space and getting through the distractions and doing our spirit work, so to speak. But before we get into that, do you want to just maybe give an example of like what would you consider the biggest distraction in your life right now, distracting you from where you want to be or where you feel like your spirit is going to be most harmoniously exchanging expressive and consumptive energies, in the sense that you're in an equilibrium?
Honestly, my biggest distraction right now is myself and my own attachments to the reality that I've created for myself, including things that I habitually do, people that I surround myself with, and just my current living scenario in general. It's really totally and entirely intertwined and wrapped around aspects that are outside of myself, and having realized that, it's really hard to operate fluidly as a sovereign being still connected to the whole, but it's a huge distraction and almost a thorn in my foot that it's hard to take my eye off of when it comes to wanting to really get down to the core of my own spiritual practice and work, and without 100% like pinpoint defining everything that's going on that's distracting in that whole. It's really just working through the life that I've created for myself. It has been proving to be more distracting than beneficial as of late. And like I was saying earlier, it all started with losing my glasses, realizing that I was more eager for those distractions and whatnot, and now it's coming more to the core of myself and seeing things for what they are and wanting to move forward and let go of them so that I can come more to that center.
Right on.
What about you, man?
Well, before I go into that, I just wanted to ask you if you feel like the losing your glasses was any sort of karma. Like, do you get any symbolism from that happening?
Well, I mean, to an extent, I feel like immediately in that moment I realized, like, oh, I feel like I've lost sight of the important things in my life. It's not just like going out and having fun and, you know, connecting on that physical experiential level. I felt like I lost sight of the things that were truly and really important internally, like my own personal growth and moving on and interconnection with people on a deeper level.
But you feel like you are doing that too, don't you?
I'm doing that at the same time, but I feel like this was one of those moments that happens not often in my life, but it seems like the universe always has to pin me down for me to take a break. I go really in, and then it's like, okay, take a look. You know, now that your glasses are gone, maybe you can really see what's important instead of looking outside of yourself. And yeah, it is very karmic feeling, and not in a negative sense at all. I'm not like, oh, woe is me, my karma is like punishing me. It's more like such a breakthrough moment and experience. Like, take your glasses off, stop looking outside yourself, and really, really sit here and feel like, are you happy with what you're surrounding yourself with, who you're surrounding yourself with, and where you're putting yourself? Like, and if not, like, make a change, because only I have the power to.
Absolutely.
So,
do you have clarity around any specifics as far as that goes? I mean, you don't have to go into details, you know.
Most definitely. I just feel like it's bringing those things more to the forefront and communicating with the people that are involved in those scenarios.
Got you.
My feelings, my intentions, and where I'm at with it.
Well, that sounds like you're in a really good place with it then.
Yeah, for sure. But it's those distractions that have helped me kind of see the truth. And I do believe that it's an up and down. It's a wavelength. You got to ride it. You're never going to be like dead in the middle, but we are so often. So remember that center and know it's there.
Right. Right. Hey, that's like a really good symbol for describing like what the distractions are from center. I mean, think about a sine wave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are literally wavelengths. We are vibrations on a molecular, atomic, subatomic, quantum level. We are vibrations. So, I mean, that center is always present, but we're also moving through it. We're going above and below, you know, that baseline, if you will, that centered, still consciousness is experiencing the waves of emotion and thought and the roller coaster of life, you know?
100%.
So, with that said, I appreciate you sharing that for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking and
Yeah,
just having the space here to share it.
exactly.
But back to you, man. I know you've got some. No, not that I know, but I feel you've got some distractions that you'd like to share of and maybe work through here.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of in a similar boat as you. I do feel like my growth has been accelerating, and I feel excited about what's to come, you know, currently looking into getting a studio space and a new home with Kara. So that's really exciting. You know, that's a huge new chapter in our lives, man. Like, so trying to create clarity around that. Don't need to get into details, but you know, I think I've briefly told you about it. We found this house that we like really have a good feeling about,
And
but
keep
there's
coming back to.
well, there's mental fears and considerations here. Primarily for me, I would need to invest quite a bit. At least in my mind, I think I would need to like actually construct a studio out of the basement. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to take the easy way out and just like be able to move all my gear and my baffles and just like treat a room rather than having to create a room, just because I know that I can get good tone. And, you know, this room at Rob's house, my band Soul Echo has been recording the past couple weeks, and we've gotten drum tone that is better than I've ever gotten. So I'm like really excited about that. I want to keep that momentum going, but I don't necessarily want to have to invest so much. And maybe that's a self-limiting belief in and of itself. I'm just trying to process that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that come to mind right away, but just kind of where I'm currently at with it. So there's that.
I just feel like, well, not necessarily a thought, more of a question. How's your heart feel about it? Like, does it really feel right? Like one of these, like, in the center, like, this is what is. It feels so good. Opportunities, moments, scenarios, or not? Is it just like some fear of the mind keeping you from feeling that centered decision, or what? Because I feel like you got some good feelings about it, but what is your heart really saying?
Well, thank you for that question. That's definitely something I need to actually spend some introspective time meditating on. I mean, I'm getting into that space just sitting right here with you, but yeah. I mean, I guess we could attempt to do a live breakthrough right here.
I mean, every moment, really.
Man, it totally is mental obstructions. It's mental phenomenon that's happening that's keeping me from feeling good about it. In my heart, I do have a gut and loving feeling about this house. I really do.
It just feels right.
But then it's so hard to admit that because I guess the mental fear side doesn't want to have to like
uproot and
not just that, uproot my financial stability, I'll say. Because it, like I said, it's an investment that I know that I could get away with not making, not on a house, but like for constructing a studio, you know, and just
but at
thinking
the same time, think of it as investing in yourself, investing your experience points into leveling up one aspect of who
Yeah.
you are, taking it back to that metaphor of the video game experience of life. You know, you got to invest your character's currencies to make it level up in certain aspects and regards.
Yeah, you're so true. Yeah, definitely brings up some deep-seated emotion in me because it's related to, I mean, finances and social slash physical security is all based around the root chakra, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but for the sake of conversation, this is
Muladhara?
oh, you know each other by name?
Is that it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
We're not cool like that. No. I call it the red chakra. That's what I call
Yeah,
it.
the root, the red.
Yeah. So this is the center that's all around physical groundedness and feeling purpose and our being, and the most dense vibrating field, vibratory field in our aura, so to speak, not to get too esoteric too soon. I don't want to scare anyone away, but
Oh, no, just kidding.
but yeah, it's very related to finances and things like that, like taking risks.
Your security, and I know that one of the things that keeps us from fully being open in that one swirling point of consciousness of our being is fear. It's one of the points that close up the most due to fear. It causes us to act out of more survival-based methods. So when we're distracted by these fearful thoughts and whatnot, the Muladhara, the root chakra, seems to close up and not want to be as energetic and vibrant and rooted and strong and supported and moving forward with that center of foundation that center of energy within us provides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that, man. For me, it's slightly a source of frustration because I feel like there have just been, because I just feel like this is a scenario that I've been going through for most of my life, you know, dealing with that root chakra energy point, you know, self-worthiness, you know, feeling like you deserve to be here, like I deserve to be here, like I deserve to earn this living that we, you know, to play this game in capitalist America, you know, we got to play this game. So just having that
foundation of abundance.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Exactly.
I feel like it's really a mindset to be built separate of the actual foundation of abundance that we might be provided for, if that makes sense. Not to
it does to me.
divide
yeah.
it, but we really need to create that sense of strong foundation and abundance and security within us before it can ever actually be provided to us.
Absolutely.
So
Which is a little backwards in today's society. I mean, at least in our social circles, I feel like our generation, you know, we're kind of spoiled. Let's be honest. You know,
it's the truth. We've been well taken care of, and not everyone exactly. I mean, I know I have though, and more and more, like, you know, our generation has been one of the generations that takes a lot longer to move out of families' houses.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a lot harder in society to be on our own and support ourselves in that sense too. So it's not just I would say a more privileged standpoint. It's just, it's harder to live on our own anymore. I feel like we're kind of being driven into a more community style life.
Right.
Once again.
I mean, it's economical. It's also psycho spiritual, if you will. You know, it's kind of just that more the spiritual side of things, like what I was saying, this sense of entitlement, or just that's all we know has been this comfortable nest.
I feel like that's more of a stigma, though.
It is, but you know,
I don't
it's
feel
worth
this
bringing
actual
up.
entitlement.
Entitlement's kind of a harsh word, but I feel that it is relevant and prevalent.
I feel like the younger generations, us included, are born with a more spiritual awareness. It's kind of just almost a natural growth and evolution. We're all becoming a lot more aware of that innate part of ourselves. And
Hmm.
I notice a lot of the younger generations connecting and uniting on that too.
Totally.
Bringing in for like kids are like aliens anymore. First of all,
Yeah.
just coming in with this crazy, bizarre inner knowledge.
Right.
And kind of back to what we were talking about of like, we got to create this stability inside of ourselves first. Like, everyone's
Mhm.
aware of as above, so below. But more
Not
so,
everyone,
not
but go
everyone,
on.
but a lot of people have heard that, like, as above, so below kind of thing, you know, like relating to the stars and whatnot. But I feel like even more so, it is more relatable is so within, so without. We're really creating and experiencing everything based on our own internal states and
Absolutely.
levels of receptivity, but these kids are coming in just fully open and receptive with this almost divine level of knowledge and intuition. And it just seems like, man, these kids got their shit together.
But at the same time, just like the difference between our generation and our parents' generations, it's give and take. There's certain things that our parents are way more mature and more evolved in.
Like finances.
Finances, physical survival, that day-to-day grind of staying driven to survive. Whereas I feel that our generation is more like, oh, we're going to get taken care of. We can slack off here and there and just like, just more susceptible to, what's the word I'm looking for? Submitting, isn't it? Succumbing to distractions, I'll say, like video games, overconsumption.
We've been one of the first generations to be fully raised with video games and like the Black Mirror, so to say. We're been raised by it, with it, for it, I don't even think it's been until recent years and whatnot that it's become more of a mainstream thought or ideology that maybe it's not so good for kids to watch TV all the time, or maybe it's not so good that all these children have phones. My little brother's 10 years old, and he talks about how there's only him and like maybe another kid. He says that everyone in his class has phones. I think it's a little bit of maybe a stretch on the truth there.
My brother says the same thing. He's 12. But maybe just turned 13 or something.
But it's so crazy that like they have phones already.
Yeah.
They're watching these crazy weird television, or not television, but YouTube videos. Like, what's that one that just came out? It's all freaky called Momo or something.
Ah, dude.
Yeah.
It's weird that you brought that up. I was actually just made aware of that last night.
Yeah,
really
I was just made
out.
aware of it recently. It freaked me out too, because my little brother, I guess one of his friends showed it to him, and he was like going through it. He remembers it word for word.
Oh, no.
And he was super freaked out. And I was like, I'm going to make him take your internet away. And he was like, please do. I don't need it. And they were like, he's freaked out by it. It actually, like, I could tell it scarred this kid. And
dude, yeah.
Just, let's get a little political or whatever this is, modern, going on here. It's freaking terrible. This video, I guess, was telling Keldon to go find sharp objects in your parents' kitchen and drive it from your wrist down your arm, And I'm like, damn, what kind of sick person? What kind of... You got to be extremely deranged. There's something not right in there if you want to make some sort of sweet video and tag it with children's tags for... they find it after watching, like, Minecraft videos or some BS. And,
right. Dude, it's so messed up.
Maybe we don't even need to share this, but it's just...
Deranged is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I seriously am just speechless. I mean...
The intention is like for kids that hurt themselves.
Right.
That's beyond deranged, yeah. It's profoundly sick.
Like, what sick satisfaction would this person get from putting that on the internet?
And I think that's a perfect example of one of the biggest, most disgusting distractions that life has created. You get so far gone in the distraction of what isn't and miss reality that you're hurting yourself, and now you're hurting children. And
right.
Like, that might be an oversimplification, but I feel like it is this society that creates such sick people.
Right. And thankfully, the light extends to, the full breadth of the spectrum.
No doubt.
I mean, there's still people like us that are working towards bringing more light into the world, and there's going to be shadows created. And let's be honest, the system is not set up for everyone to have equal opportunity and resources, equal resources. And I'm not saying
Truth.
that I have the answer here, but what we're getting at is honestly, we do need to go within. We need to build that world within ourselves and then carry that forward. You know, like get off the internet. If these videos are getting to our consciousness
And our children, our
and by
whatever,
extension, our
siblings.
children, siblings, our community, as a community, this type of just blatant suicidal evil of just wanting to drag everything back into that void, instead of recognizing that we're coming from that space, we're growing out of that space.
These are such large distractions that they're literally doing the opposite of what we're trying to do here.
Right.
And it's freaky.
It's
weird
freaky
stuff. And that in itself is a perfect example of where distractions can lead, though. I'm just going to reiterate that again. It's
because what are we talking about here? We're talking about distractions from the light. And I'm not going to get preachy on what the light is, but I think that everyone has their idea of what truth and love and the gravity of love, like what that is in their life. And so we're talking about distractions from the light, distractions from being a part of the expansion of consciousness rather than contracting it and refining it.
Trying to go backwards.
Trying to keep one idea, one paradigm eternal. Even heaven, it's not eternal. If it were, what are we doing down here?
One very graphic way that was kind of like the timeline of the expansion of consciousness was explained to me once by a good friend was, he was like, we've all done things that aren't necessarily right. And we've all been misguided and sad and depressed at a time, but we got to keep moving forward. That's just the natural progression of how things go. And if we're to go against that forward movement, the momentum of everything that's going on is so rapid and so quickly, just like trying to go against that would literally rip our consciousness and beings to shred. It's depression, it's sadness, it's everything that's in the past and away from the moment. It just wipes us of all that light. Because the light moves forward, it moves on. It is in the moment. It isn't shining backwards, really. And for me, like that simple little way that he said that was like, whoa, you're right. I got to keep moving forward. Can't dwell on anything I've done right or wrong because my light isn't there anymore. It's moved on, and hopefully whoever, whatever situation that was affected is able to carry that same light onward,
Absolutely. I mean, hey, let's just take a moment right here just to remember what it feels like to be present and centered. Just to feel okay. Here in this moment, it's okay to be here in this moment and in the bodies that we're incarnated in. And despite all the lies that we try to tell ourselves and that we try to tell each other, we try to shape everyone into our idea of what's right. And when we stop trying to do that and just feel back into it, here we are. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
I recently listened to a Ram Dass podcast last week or something, and he was talking about spiritual practice and how even that is a trap of enlightenment. It's something that keeps us from enlightenment and awakening is our own spiritual practice. Of course, that sounds super counterintuitive, but his point was that it's not that we don't go through it. Of course, we still practice to come back to the center. We practice an active, conscious reaction towards distraction.
But it's
a pushback.
feel like my interpretation of that is, we can get caught up in the mental, analytical ideals of what it is to be a spiritual person. Otherwise, we're just living in the shadow of what it actually is to be moving forward with that energy. We're doing the movements, but not so
But not the
taking part.
movements.
Yeah.
It's not about doing them, it's about being them.
Exactly. Actually, being that, which is exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, doing comes from being, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess they're both connected. I do feel so much better when I do sit in meditation and practice my yoga, but I don't feel like if just like creating a particular regiment for myself will make me become better. Not all these physical practices of sitting down and breathing or doing yoga unless I actually take the time to observe and allow myself to be and learn how I operate and what triggers me and
Totally.
all of those practices that are insinuated but not actually taught about when you're meditating and whatnot. That's kind of what we come across.
Well, I think that the distinction that I was making too, I mean, I totally agree with what you said, but to me, there's a identification difference. There's a felt sense distinction between being the doer and just being. Do you feel that? Like, just opening our awareness into that witness of even our awareness. I can be Sean who's doing yoga, or I can just be present in the moment.
Observing Sean do yoga.
Observing Sean allowing his body to extend into a union with the universe.
Literally. Isn't that what yoga translates into?
Literally.
Union? Yeah. Wow.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up here, and we've given a preview as to what we're gonna dive deeper into next episode, which is just talking about our own personal spiritual practices. And I think we've given a pretty good example of what distraction can feel like and where that goes and how good it can feel to release ourselves from its bonds.
Truly. And first and foremost, just identify those things. Don't be mad at ourselves either. No judgment here. Just allowing things to be and recognizing is definitely the first step to moving past them.
Which I think is a perfect action takeaway for today.
Just in our meditation, even in just our daily lives, start to become more aware of these things that entice us and distract us from being in our more wholesome, centered, aware selves. And don't have to do too much on it. Just become aware of it. And
become aware, yeah.
Over time, we'll figure out together on our own and whatever it takes, like what we need to do to stay more in that center. Oh, excuse me, but yeah, stay more in that centered awareness.
I mean, like you said, it's
Whoa.
I mean, like you said, that is the first step, is just cultivating that awareness of where our hangups are, where our limitations are, where our habits are. And if you're a person that finds writing to be an effective means for organizing your thoughts and to making thoughts physical, feel free. I mean, break open a journal, just kind of write down some of your own limitations that you're already aware of, and then commit to a practice of just observing that, as Clayton said, non-judgmentally.
Exactly. And if you feel so inclined, don't hesitate to maybe email us what you realize some of your distractions might be. And if you make it so far, figure out what you can do to kind of avoid that little slip up there, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, our email is breakthroughconsciousness@gmail.com. Yeah, just go ahead and share some of your thoughts or feelings with us from this week, and we'll do our best to touch on those and include that in future episodes.
By all means. And we also still have an open invitation for anyone that wants to come on and talk with us. come hang out in the studio and just approach us with a topic, anything that you think would fit. I mean, at this point, I think we could fit just about any topic into the broad, theme
We can even
of
figure
evolution of
out
consciousness.
Consciousness through finances at this point. I believe it.
Right. And we kind of touched on that earlier today, and clearly I started to surface, some of my own hang-ups in that region, so all the better.
Truly.
Well, thank you all for tuning in with us.
Until next time, we get out of the loop.
And into it all.
Peace.